You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and lots of public policy this evening. Let's give people a little bit of idea of who they're looking at, who is running for Attorney General. At least who is here today running for Attorney General. Renato is 41.
That's right.
I once castigated somebody for asking that as the first question, so he will excuse me if he was doing that. But more seriously, so if people want to get an idea of you, I understand I've heard different things. You grew up in Cicero, Chicago, Naperville, some combination there.
That's right. My dad's family is from Cicero. My mom's family is from Little Italy. I was born at Rush here in Chicago. We lived in Cicero when I was very young. We moved out to Naperville when I was a kid, and back then Naperville was farmland. I mean, it was a place where you could get a home for under $100,000, which was, something that my parents really wanted.
Okay, not too long. Just give me a brief hint, because
Sure.
I don't, because I want to get to the substance here.
Let's get to the substance.
Okay,
so
so
there
you
go.
grew up in Cicero and Naperville. You went to Naperville Central. You graduated from there in 1994. The working class parents, as you point out, right?
Very much so.
Were you a working class kind of guy? Did you get scrapes? You get in fights when you were like 10, 12, 14? You punch some guys out. You get how would they say? They choose you off, I mean, are you a tough guy, seriously? Or are you like a pansy? Where do you put yourself?
Well,
are you somewhere in between?
I would say I'm a tough guy, but I'm not somebody who picks fights with people unnecessarily. I've had times where people threatened to kill me. That was very difficult to deal with. Sometimes to my face. Sometimes I would find out about the threats and I had to go into protective custody. I fought.
Well, that's recent. When you were a kid.
When I was a kid, I was somebody. There were times when I got in altercations, but usually I was not the one starting it. Let's just put it that way.
Or somebody you knew how to get physical if you had to.
If I had to.
Okay. And now, we're getting a little bit ahead of yourself. You went to the University of Chicago as an undergrad. You did pretty well there. 3.76 out of 4. University of Chicago is different. They don't have grade inflation. They never had it, right?
That is true.
That's really impressive to have a 3.76 out of 4 from University of Chicago. I mean, that's like almost a perfect straight A average.
It was pretty good. It's very hard to get minuses and pluses and everything there too. So an A minus is 3.7. So.
Phi Beta Kappa, editor-in-chief of the Chicago Moron. No, we're just kidding. Chicago Maroon, they call it. I went there too, so we used to jokingly call it the Moron. Wow. But only if we didn't like what the editor-in-chief was writing that day.
Got
no,
it.
But that's impressive. Phi Beta Kappa, Yale Law Journal, articles editor.
Right. It's Yale Law School.
So as I said to Barack when Barack Obama was here 6 times, I said, you did pretty well. He was president of the Harvard Law Review. He said, yeah, I did pretty. He said, I did pretty good. He said, Jeff, we don't want to talk too, put on airs when we say that. So, I did pretty good. He said. So you were like Barack. You did pretty good.
I did okay.
You did okay. And then you came out and you clerked.
I did.
Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. For people who don't know that, that's a big deal. If you're a clerk on the Circuit Court of Appeals, that's really good.
That is
It's
true.
not easy to get one of those clerkships.
It wasn't. It was a learning experience for me.
Higginbotham?
Yeah.
Judge in the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah.
That was 2002. Then to Heller Ehrman. Pronouncing that right?
Heller Ehrman.
Heller Ehrman, major law firm in San Francisco.
Yep.
But there you were doing mostly defense of antitrust and class action litigation. You were working for the guys you sometimes think now are oppressing people. Would that be fair?
I think it's fair to say. I was representing companies that were getting sued by other companies. So I represent Visa when they got sued by MasterCard. Things like that.
So it's just companies against companies. You were not. Did you ever have like individuals do class actions lawsuits and you get that dismissed?
No,
Those
not
individuals. No.
Not
It's always
really,
companies against
It was
companies.
generally companies against companies. That's what the antitrust stuff was. I will tell you, it was fine. I mean, it was very intellectually stimulating. It was not something I felt as passionate about as the work I was doing at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is one of the main reason why I left.
Because did you try any cases in your first 4 or 5 years? No.
I mean,
nothing gets tried. Right?
You almost never go to court. I didn't even really argue motions or do much anything.
So did you go to the U.S. Attorney's Office because you wanted a good fight, you wanted a good trial, you wanted to cross-examine people, you wanted to put them in jail? Did I get that right?
I don't know if it's what I would say is I wanted to do something I really cared about, and I wanted to do something that I thought was meaningful. And I just was, I saw the people who were junior partners at my law firm, and I did not want to turn out that way. And I did nothing against them, they're very nice people, but I did not want to be somebody who did work I just didn't care that much about, and ultimately was what I felt to be a cog in a machine. Just doing something that they weren't inspired by.
Okay, so you were doing, you were cross-examining, you convicted this guy, Cassia, is that right?
Mhm, Michael Cassia.
First federal prosecution of a high-frequency trader.
Mhm.
This is like, you went to the U.S. Attorney's Office in '07, right?
I did.
So you're hitting the heyday, like the crash of '08, and then they started going after those guys who were involved in some of that kind of stuff, like high-frequency trading?
Yeah, I was really, you as a federal prosecutor, as you become more senior, you get to really specialize and handle the large cases. I was fortunate enough to handle a lot of really big, high-profile cases as a senior prosecutor, and they were generally white-collar cases like that one, going after people who were gaming the system in some way.
So you tried over 12 federal jury cases, right?
Yeah, I've tried at this point like 16 or 17.
17
Yeah,
jury trials.
17, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was your longest jury trial you tried?
3.5 weeks.
So that's important because you're saying, as the Illinois Attorney General, what? What do you want to do as the Illinois Attorney General?
I want to, fight on behalf of families like my family. We didn't talk a lot about him, but my dad's a cashier at Walmart. So people like that who are being victimized by people who are taking advantage of the system. I did that as a federal prosecutor on the criminal side. At the AG's office, you do that more on the civil side. You bring lawsuits on behalf of the people of the state when they're getting defrauded, when they're getting harmed, when their wages aren't being paid, etc.
But people say, like Lisa Madigan, she was not a trial lawyer. As I recall, she maybe had 4 years at a law firm. She really wasn't trying cases. She became a state senator, I believe, for a few years, then she became AG. You have a different route.
That's true.
You've tried cases.
Yeah.
You're saying you can go in there, you could have a large staff. How many folks do you have? How many lawyers do you have in the Attorney General's office?
375.
So you got a pretty big group. If you
Yep.
want to go after people, you're not going to go out. You might guard them on some of the bigger cases. You may step in and try the case. Possibly. Would you do that?
Possibly, but more importantly, I would do like Pat Fitzgerald did with us. I would talk to them in the weeds a little bit about what the evidence was, try to understand how we were going to prove the case. The most important thing somebody does in that position is they decide when to bring cases, when to settle cases, and when to push forward and try them. And having experience actually trying cases, actually litigating cases is really valuable. I mean, we all respected Pat Fitzgerald because he had done it before.
Yeah, tell people about Patrick Fitzgerald. How did he come here? What was special about him, if anything? When did he leave? When did you come?
Sure.
Because you came there in 2007. When did he come there?
I think it was
2001?
Yeah, 2001 or 2.
What was the big deal? Who brought him in there? Do you know?
Yeah, it
that?
was Peter Fitzgerald, who was the Republican senator here. at
U.S.
the time.
Senator. And he brought in Patrick from where?
The Southern District of New York.
And that
which
was
is
really,
Manhattan.
and that was unusual. Usually, if you're the U.S. Senator, you have a say, some would say almost full control of who's going to be the U.S. Attorney from the Northern District of Illinois. There are only 3 U.S. Attorneys in Illinois, right? Northern, Southern, Central.
Right.
They usually make it from Illinois. Peter Fitzgerald went out to New York, and he didn't want somebody from Illinois. Why didn't he want somebody from
He
Illinois?
wanted somebody who was, apart from the, potentially the machine and favor mill that we had here in Illinois. He wanted somebody who was an outsider who could come in and from a perspective of somebody who was not part of the system, take a look at it and pursue public corruption cases.
He didn't trust people who were here. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because he thought they're too part of the establishment, and sure enough, he came in 2001. He indicted the prior sitting governor, George Ryan.
Right.
His term expired in 2002. Remember about when he indicted him?
I think, was that 04?
Like a year later.
Okay, 05? Yeah.
Oh, no, just a year after he
Oh,
left.
that was
George
02.
was facing indictment, George Ryan. That really shook people up,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because you're going after a governor, all right?
Sure.
It's a big deal.
It was.
I mean, Scott Lazar, I knew Scott, he's a good guy, I knew Jim Burns, all those. They had not done that in recent times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's relevant because why is this corruption relevant to this race we're talking about now?
Well,
You hear about public corruption when you get in the forum and you start, who are
Of
they
course.
talking, and who are the corrupt guys they're talking about?
Well, they're generally talking about people down in Springfield, whether it's the leaders of the Democratic Party.
Closer to home, Cook County, who are they talking about?
Joe Berrios, for example.
Well, I didn't hear you say that.
Joe Berrios.
Joe tell the people who Joe Berrios is.
Well, he's the assessor, and he's also the head of the Cook County Democratic Party. So, there's a lot of concern amongst people on the ground. And when I say that, when I say people, I mean Democrats. People are going to
Like who's concerned? Is J.B. Pritzker concerned about Joe Berrios?
I don't think J.B.
Is Kwame Raoul concerned about Joe Berrios?
No.
Tell me, what's Kwame's thoughts? You just heard him the other day. Did you hear
He
Kwame's
said
thoughts?
that let's just let the voters decide what they want.
And what about J.B. Pritzker? What does he say? He's running for governor.
I
What's he?
think he doesn't weigh in on Joe Berrios.
Chris Kennedy, what does he say?
Well, he thinks Joe Berrios needs to get out.
All right, and what does Renato Mariotti say about Joe Berrios?
I say that it's KD. He's an outsider. He's somebody who has a lot of expertise in the private sector, and I think we need somebody who, frankly, like him, has experience dealing with
Okay.
values and come in from the outside and fix it.
Are you gung-ho to clean up everything?
Yeah, I mean,
Are
frankly.
you gonna let the chips fall where they may? Because you're not really a public corruption office in the AG's office.
That's true.
At least not known for that, right?
That's true.
But it could be.
It could be. And more importantly, look, I'm the only person in this race who's not a politician, who's not elected to something or appointed by Rom. I don't have any favors to trade in with anybody. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm somebody who can literally come in from the outside and be a trusted person. And you know what? What I would like is the next time the next time there's a crisis like this, it won't be because the Tribune investigated the property tax system. It will be because me, as Attorney General, investigated something, brought it out to the public, and then the public's going to be as concerned as they were now about the property tax system. That was real change, but it's unfortunate that it had to be the Tribune and not us.
So do you view yourself as like, well, Patrick Fitzgerald, for people who didn't follow this, he indicted and convicted George Ryan, put him in jail for 6.5 years. Rod Blagojevich was there. Rod didn't learn the lesson, so Patrick indicted and convicted him, put him in jail for 14 years. Was that sentence excessive?
It was high, I would say. It was higher than I predicted at the time, and I think...
Would you have wanted a lesser sentence? Because you try to do justice, right?
Agreed.
I mean, the U.S. Attorney's Office, that's what they say they do.
Mhm.
They try to get their guy because they
Right.
think he's guilty, or woman, but they try to do justice. In the Illinois Attorney General's Office, do you try to do justice?
Absolutely.
Criminal,
Absolutely.
economic, the whole thing.
Absolutely. And the point is, especially too, you're the stewards of the public trust. You don't represent, you're not trying to get convictions for the sake of convictions. You don't represent yourself. You represent the people. And the whole point is that you represent the United States, or in this case, the state of Illinois, and you represent everybody. And so, in terms of convictions and sentences, I think that was driven by the sentence of somebody else in the case, frankly, Tony Resco, by a different judge. But look, I think I respect Judge Zagel and his opinion. What I would say is, as a federal prosecutor, I always tried to seek justice, and sometimes that meant, giving a reduced sentence to somebody. So.
Look, is it possible you could be too litigious because you want to, when there's a bad guy out there, you want to go sue.
Mhm.
When you view these people as being victims,
Mhm.
often of corporations, you'll
Right.
sue the corporation. If it's somebody else that's not a corporation and they're a victim, you'll sue them.
Mhm.
But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce does these annual surveys. They put Illinois as one of the least favorable, like number 48 of 50, in terms of a litigation business climate. You understand what they're saying?
Mhm. Yeah, I do understand.
Could that be right?
Well, what I think, to be blunt, I think that our state is in such a bad spot, and I think it's partly corruption and it's partly a mismanagement by our elected officials down in Springfield, that it doesn't surprise me that I think businesses are concerned about this state. I mean, we have a lot of amazing things about this state, great natural resources, amazing people, but when you have a state that's bankrupt, where basic infrastructure and basic needs aren't being met, I could understand why businesses are concerned.
Well, they're also talking about the climate. They say they're not treated fairly in the courts, there are delays, they can't get a fair trial, it's too political. Iowa's number 4, Illinois number 48. You
Mhm.
see my point?
I understand your point.
When
What I would
somebody
say-
criticizes you, you're usually going to make it worse.
Well,
Is
what
that
I would-
possible?
I don't think so. Look, I would not be political about it, but the point is to be aggressive when there's something that needs to be, a right that needs to be vindicated. But like you said, to do justice, if particularly because we have limited resources, we just don't have the time to pursue every case. So if something's a waste of time, I'm not going to do something just to get political points. The point is to bring a case when, you know, there is somebody being harmed and there are people harmed.
Three things. What are you running on?
Running on, taking on Donald Trump and stopping him from, destroying the Constitution and hurting people in this state. Economic justice on behalf of people like my family who are struggling to make ends meet and are getting harmed, whether it's by financial institutions or by employers who aren't paid wages and things like that. And also, I want to stand up also for our election system, which has been penetrated, and we need to make sure that we have free and fair elections here in Illinois.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, not that much
Yeah.
time, 30 seconds on each. What's the most important way you take on Trump? Give people an example that they can understand. There could be other ways. Give them the best example of how you take on Trump as the Illinois Attorney General.
Sure. Right now, everyone's talking about those dreamers that, unfortunately, DACA, exactly right. These young kids who are allowed to stay in the United States. Many months ago, I wrote an op-ed about this, about how I think it would be unconstitutional to deport the dreamers using the information that they provided. I think that if Donald Trump started deporting them, which is up in the air right now, I would file suit on behalf of the dreamers in Illinois to keep
So there are
them here.
800,000 total dreamers across the country. Roughly how many in Illinois?
Tens of thousands. I don't know the exact
Okay.
number.
You file on behalf. You think
Yeah.
that, and you think that lawsuit would hold up? Would you file it in federal court?
Yeah, I would.
And it wouldn't be dismissed?
No, because it's a
You think
federal
you'd win
civil.
it? You'd win
I
it?
think I would.
Up to the Supremes if you had to.
If I had to. And the value of that, by the way, because we've seen a lot of litigation over the travel ban and net neutrality and everything else, it also keeps those kids here for years while the political winds change as well. So no matter hopefully we wouldn't even need to prosecute that case to its
So
conclusion.
some might say, these folks were brought here when they were very young, their parents were not citizens, they didn't become citizens, they say it's unfair because this is the only country they know. But then somebody might say to you, well, if there are like 20,000, 40,000 of these folks that you're gonna sue on behalf and devote your time for that, what about the 40,000 kids who are US citizens here who are facing similar, well not similar, maybe they're facing problems, the streets aren't safe for them. Lots of problems. Should your priorities be to those 40,000 who are not citizens or to the 40,000 who are actually Illinois citizens?
Right.
Because you can't always do both. What's your answer?
Well, you say you can't always do both. What I would say is, those I don't think those dreamers make the streets less safe, and I think
No, I'm not, I didn't mean to say,
contribute
I'm
to
just saying there are
Illinois.
other people with the problems. I wasn't
No, I get
saying-
that. Look, there's
So,
always
who do you put your priority on?
I
The
think-
Illinois citizens or the non-Illinois citizens?
I put anybody who's a resident of Illinois who's being harmed is somebody that enters the calculus. There's a lot of cases, and you prioritize cases based on the amount of harm and the extent of the harm to people here in Illinois.
Economic justice, the most important economic justice you need to address. Give people an example of that.
Sure.
As Illinois Attorney General.
Okay. The Federal Consumer Bureau that protects us had a rule that prevented banks from forcing us into arbitration. Now that rule is gone. That Obama-era rule is gone. So what does that mean? That means that when everybody, let's say 100,000 people in the state are overcharged by $100 from their bank, you can't go to court and do a class action lawsuit. You're stuck in arbitration. No one's going to do an arbitration over $100. You need the Attorney General's office to be out there when there's a lot of harm spread out amongst a lot of people to be the one bringing that
You
lawsuit.
bring that as a class action on behalf of all these citizens or residents in Illinois who are harmed.
Right.
Okay. Let's go over to safety, okay? Public safety. Laquan McDonald. Did Rahm Emanuel conscionably instruct his law department to delay the release of that video? And did that cause unnecessary disruption and rust in the state of Illinois?
You know what? Because I'm a careful guy and a former federal prosecutor. I don't know what Rahm said because I wasn't there, but it sure looks like there was an effort to hold that tape because of political consequences.
Because he was running for re-election.
Exactly right.
And it wasn't released until after his election.
And
So
regardless
should you
of
come
what-
out right now and say to Rahm, I can't support you over that. And I want you to know that because I want all my followers to know where I stand. Should you do that?
Well, I will tell you, I'm deeply concerned about Rahm and where things are in the city. regardless of what he said regarding the tape, that is a perception that's out there, and that's not good. It's a problem.
Okay, so we got a lot of street crime out there, we got a lot of police misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the danger greatest? If you're on the south side and the west side, and you're black, is your greatest danger from a criminal who's most likely black? Not because blacks are bad, because the predominant population on the south and west side that we're talking about is black.
Sure.
Is your greatest danger from a black guy who's a criminal, or from a policeman?
Wow. That's a really hard thing to quantify. I mean, what I'd say is, if you live in certain communities in the city, your life is in constant danger. You often have to feel like you have to carry a gun or be part of a gang just to survive, to not be killed or shot at on a daily basis. But obviously there's something much worse about a person acting under the color of the law with a badge who's authorized to use force, using force in an improper way that destroys the public confidence.
Is there a lot of that still going on, police misconduct?
Of course. And we just saw WBZ did a study talking about how when there's shootings happening in suburban, it's not just Cook County, it's suburban police departments.
So do you take on both of those and try to reduce both of those potential harms as the Illinois Attorney General?
I think you do. I think you have to work in partnership with state and local, or excuse me, not state and local, but local authorities. So, for example, it's working in partnership with Kim Fox, who I know is working on some of those same issues here in Cook County.
So you raised Kim Fox, that's interesting. It was 2 weeks ago, I saw in the Chicago Tribune, you may have seen this too, it was about 2 weeks ago, there was a report of a young lady, 15, black, who was the victim of a gangbang of 6 guys, she alleged, and I think it's fairly clear there were 6. 2 copped a plea. State's Attorney Fox, this may have been started a while ago, but she's the state's attorney now. Apparently she signed off on a plea that gave these guys 4 months. 4 months for gangbanging a 15-year-old girl. So there's all this stuff about sexual harassment and all that stuff, and people can't be against it as much, they can't possibly be too much against it. And yet I haven't heard one of the 8 Attorney General candidates talk about this incident and say maybe that was wrong. Maybe those 2 guys, 14, 15, 16, whatever they were, maybe 4 months is a bit too lenient for a woman who's been gangbanged. What do you say?
Well, I would say it would be too lenient if the person was convicted of the crime. Okay, if it wasn't.
Well, I think
What I don't know.
I think these guys pled guilty.
Well, they did, but
They apologized, I think.
right. What I don't know is the strength of the evidence that she.
Okay, but if
That's
it was
important.
strong, if there was strong.
Oh, with strong evidence, obviously.
Should you be talking about this now?
Yes, but here's the thing. One
Because
thing
I haven't
don't
heard you
do-
talk about it before.
Yeah, that's
today.
fair. One thing I don't do in this race is I don't pander to people. I don't like. There's a lot of people who just when they see something on the news, they just spout off BS platitudes. That's what politicians tend to do. I'm not a politician. I don't do that. So if I see a case, you know what I think when I see that headline in the paper? I think, I wonder what caused career prosecutors at the state's attorney's office to do that. I need to find out more. I need to find out more information about the quality of the evidence they had, because before I make an irresponsible accusation and spout off my mouth, I want to make sure I know whether or not they had sufficient, and maybe they didn't have sufficient evidence to go forward, and maybe this was they were going to have to drop the case otherwise. I don't know.
Okay. We got 3 or 4 minutes left. Where have we gone wrong? Is there something that you should be talking about on the AG's race that I'm not smart enough to bring up? Because if not, I got plenty of stuff. I'm just giving you a chance.
I'll tell you, one thing I think people at home may not realize is just how screwed up the system is in Illinois, particularly regarding campaign finance. I mean, I'm a first-time candidate, literally never run for office before, and I am blown away by the amount of money that's flowing into this race from...
How much? How much does Kwame have? We're taking this on January 25th. The latest reports were filed, or the only quarter that's filed at the end of the year. What do we say? $1 million?
Oh, well over that, yeah.
And it went up quickly because like 3 weeks into December, it was reported 600,000. So in a month or less, the last few weeks, it went to $1 million. Where'd that money come from?
Oh, big tobacco, power companies, utility companies, gas companies.
The state Senate President John Culleton, he supports his guys, right?
That's true.
He's a state senator. He's that, and not just him. I mean, you look over that list. Senator Harmon's there giving money.
Yeah.
Lots of senators, but that's all directed, I would imagine, by. And that's not a slap on John Culleton. Look, he's the Senate President. He's got to support his senators. If it was a Republican, I'm sure the Republican would be doing the same thing. whoever is there has to support their guys. But a lot of money comes in, like, okay, you.
But also beyond that, people probably at home don't know, there's no cap on contributions. No cap.
No cap. I thought
So-
there were caps.
There are caps until somebody puts in at least $250,000.
And who put in that?
Drury put in almost 300K of his own money. Then he took $150,000 from some financier.
Okay.
And
So it blows the
and-
caps, you don't think that's a good idea? Because the idea is if it blows the caps, if you've got a rich guy, well then you can go out and get like
Right.
10, 20, 30,000.
Except the
It doesn't
rich
work
guy.
that way?
Except the rich guy also gets the benefit of the blown cap. So actually, it encourages people to put in their own money, blow the caps, and they can get a big check.
So you would try to legislatively change that rule as Attorney General?
Absolutely. And look, the concern.
Okay,
that I
how much
have-
how much have you raised roughly so
I
far?
raised the first quarter 345, something like that.
345.
Yeah.
So does that mean you're competitive?
Yeah, I mean, I think
You're doing okay.
I'm doing pretty well.
You're
I'm
getting
actually-
earned media. You're
yeah.
getting earned media on public affairs.
I
You're
do.
getting on MSNBC. You're getting on
That's
CNN.
True.
Wherever I look on cable, there you are.
That is true.
So it balances out. Do we really need a law to change that? I mean, you are on your own showing, you're sort of the Bernie Sanders this group, small contributions, right?
You know what?
I mean, Bernie
I-
had, what,
I-
$27?
You know, exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, my average donation is well under $100, but you know what's sad is all these thousands of people will donate $20 at a time to get me up, let's say, to raise $100,000, and then some financier will give somebody a $100,000 check.
So you're sticking
because
with the
they're,
caps.
yeah, because they are, yeah, I
All right,
think it's
what
it's
else?
wrong.
Anything else we haven't talked about?
Yeah.
Time's scarce.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I think the other thing that people, you know, I think that the people need to realize with this race is how important it is. There's not enough attention paid to it. It's going to affect, we have had an attorney general in office for 16 years, and we now have an opportunity at the most important time with an AG to take on Trump. People are focused a lot on the governor's race with good reason, but I think people need to focus on this race because there are real distinctions between these candidates. I literally, you know, a lot of these folks are.
So you
are
gotta get
insiders.
into focus, you gotta get issues, you gotta get issue ads, and you gotta get all these folks to appear on public affairs. Seriously, we wanna challenge people. We don't want journalists who just suck up to people. And I'm using that word because we see it. Because if you suck up, they come on the show. If you ask them challenging questions fair, they stay away. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
You need the press. Trump goes after the press and people say that's wrong because you want press.
Yeah, not like that.
You want press to be tough on
Well,
you and everybody else, right?
Absolutely. The public needs the press, by the way. It is wrong and it's irresponsible what Donald Trump is doing to the press because all of us need the press as an independent check on his power. And we also need the press here. We need more opportunities. There's no televised debate. You know, we need more
Excuse me,
opportunities.
I know you don't want to run down your 7 opponents, but give people an idea. What is it that's special about you? When they look at who to vote for, why Renato Mariotti as opposed to the other 7?
Look, all of these other 7 people are politicians, insiders. They've all given themselves well over $100,000 in this race. They're taking big checks from people. They are part of the problem. We have had a problem here in Illinois with too much patronage, too much corruption, too many favors getting traded around back and forth in Springfield and here in Cook County. It's wrong. You know, I am an outsider. I'm somebody who is a prosecutor, who is an experienced.
Renato Mariotti, look, he's the first one of these 8. We've spoken to all 8 of the candidates. I have spoken to their handlers. They're all thinking about it. They may be here. We hope they all come on. Look, my New Year's resolution, charity toward all and malice toward none. If you haven't come on, all is forgiven. Just come on now before March 20. You'll get the same fair, challenging treatment that you saw Renato Mariotti get. Was it fair?
I thought so.
Okay. And folks, you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.